Imagine this, a scroll, not just parchment but knowledge. It describes how to calculate the Earth's circumference using shadows. Another explains how to perform eye surgery. One outlines the movement of stars, predicting eclipses centuries in advance. Now imagine them all in flames. The Library of Alexandria didn't just store books. It was the brain of the ancient world, a place where science, philosophy, and imagination fused. And we lost it, not in a single cataclysm, but in a slow, brutal suffocation of human progress. We're not talking about myth. We're talking about one of the most catastrophic losses of knowledge in human history. Founded in the 3rd century BCE, under the rule of Ptolemy I Soter, a general of Alexander the Great, the Library of Alexandria was designed with imperial ambition. It wasn't enough to rule land. The Ptolemies wanted to rule knowledge. Their goal: collect every written work on Earth. Every ship that docked in Alexandria's harbor was searched. Scrolls were confiscated, copied, and often never returned. The original was kept. The copy given back. This was no accident, it was policy. An act of cultural absorption. Knowledge was power, and Alexandria was becoming the most powerful city on the planet. At its height, estimates suggest the library contained 400,000 to 700,000 scrolls. That number is staggering, especially considering that each scroll was handwritten, often unique. Papyrus, ink, and intellect. No backups, no copies in the cloud. Just rooms full of fragile brilliance. But the library was more than a storage house. It was a living organism. It breathed with the minds of geniuses who walked its halls. Eratosthenes, who calculated the Earth's circumference using a stick and a well. Herophilos, who studied the human nervous system. Archimedes, who revolutionized physics. And Hypatia, the philosopher who would later die for what this library represented: unfiltered thought. The Ptolemies built more than one structure. The Royal Library was part of the Mouseion, a kind of research institute. Think of it as the world's first university. Scholars lived there, worked there, debated, dissected ideas. They were given food and lodging in exchange for thinking. In other words, Alexandria paid people to be curious. This model was revolutionary. In Athens or Rome, philosophy was often the luxury of the elite. In Alexandria, it was institutionalized, systematized, globalized. They didn't care where you came from. If your ideas had value, you had a place. Greek, Egyptian, Persian, Indian, Phoenician, the minds of multiple civilizations collided here. There are stories, some likely true, some bordering on legend, that the library contained early versions of heliocentric models, that Babylonian star charts from 1,000 years earlier sat alongside early theories of atoms and infinite universes, that lost works of Sophocles, entire treatises of Pythagoras, and unknown surgical procedures were all shelved in orderly silence. But here's the twist. None of it was built to last. The Library of Alexandria was a monument to human achievement, but it was also terrifyingly vulnerable. Scrolls decay. Empires collapse. Belief systems clash. And ambition often eats its own children. And that's where the next part of the story begins. The fall of the Library of Alexandria wasn't a single moment. There was no great explosion, no dramatic siege with flaming arrows. No, the death of this monument was quiet, bureaucratic, messy. A tragedy told in chapters of neglect, conquest, and ideology. The first blow came in 48 BCE. Julius Caesar, embroiled in a civil war against Pompey, arrived in Alexandria and found himself trapped by Egyptian forces. In a desperate move, he ordered the ships in the harbor to be burned to block enemy reinforcements. The fire spread unintentionally, we think, but the warehouses near the docks were part of the library's satellite storage. Hundreds of thousands of scrolls may have been reduced to smoke in that moment. And just like that, The world's largest intellectual hub suffered its first mutilation, but the heart of the library survived for a while. In the centuries that followed, Alexandria became a city caught in the political and religious crossfire of shifting empires. Each new ruler brought new enemies, and knowledge especially controversial, or foreign knowledge, became collateral damage. In the 3rd century CE, Roman Emperor Aurelian launched a campaign to retake Alexandria during a rebellion. City walls were breached. Battles were fought in the streets. The Bruchian district, where the main library stood, was likely devastated. Again, the scrolls paid the price. Then came the Christians. By the late 4th century, Christianity was no longer an underground cult. It was the state religion of the Roman Empire. And with that power came a new threat: ideological purity. Pagan temples were desecrated. Statues were shattered. And knowledge? Knowledge was suspicious, especially if it didn't align with Scripture. In 391 CE, Emperor Theodosius I issued a decree banning pagan practices. Bishop Theophilus of Alexandria led a zealous campaign to cleanse the city of its impure heritage. The Serapeum, a massive temple that housed parts of the library, was destroyed, and with it, likely another vast trove of scrolls, perhaps the last surviving collections from the original library. The final chapter came in 415 CE. Hypatia, mathematician, philosopher, and one of the last intellectuals tied to Alexandria's ancient tradition, was brutally murdered by a Christian mob. Accused of sorcery, she was dragged through the streets, skinned alive with roofing tiles, and dismembered. Her death wasn't just the end of a scholar. It was the execution of a legacy. After Hypatia, no great thinkers walked those halls. No scrolls were copied. No global dialogues took place. Alexandria became a city of memory, its genius buried under layers of ash, fear, and silence. And the most painful part? We don't even know what we lost. There are whispers hints in ancient texts, second-hand references to works that no longer exist. Did the library contain complete medical treatises from India? Were early Greek ideas of heliocentrism backed by Babylonian astronomy? Were there maps, long before Columbus, showing knowledge of other continents? Did Heron's steam-powered machines hint at an industrial revolution 1,500 years early? We'll never know, because all of it fact or legend burned, rotted, or was violently erased. This wasn't just a cultural loss. It was a reset of civilization. Imagine, what if we had reached space in the 1200s? What if electricity had lit the streets of Rome? What if global medicine had evolved tenfold before the Black Death? The Library of Alexandria wasn't just a building. It was humanity's head start, and we set it on fire. People think knowledge is safe now. We've got clouds, backups, decentralized networks. Google knows everything. Right? Wrong. The lesson of Alexandria is simple. Knowledge is only safe if people want it to survive. And history shows us again and again that they often don't. The Library of Alexandria fell not just to fire, but to fear. Fear of change, fear of contradiction, fear of the unknown. That fear wears many masks: religion, politics, ego, nationalism, and all of them burn equally well. Fast forward to now. We live in the most connected age in human history. More data is created every second than the Library of Alexandria ever held. But how much of it will survive 1,000 years? How much of it is even true? How much is being erased quietly, not by flames, but by algorithmic filters, server decay, censorship, or indifference? In a strange twist, we're repeating Alexandria's mistake in reverse. Back then, knowledge was rare and sacred, painstakingly written by hand, guarded, duplicated scroll by scroll. Today, knowledge is infinite, and that infinity is drowning us. The meaningful is buried beneath the viral. The verifiable is outshouted by the loud. Alexandria lost its scrolls. we risk losing our signal. And when civilizations lose signal, they don't go dark overnight. They decay. They forget what they once knew. They stop asking hard questions. They stop building. Now ask yourself, if the Library of Alexandria had survived, untouched, uninterrupted, where would we be? Would the Renaissance have started in 500 CE? Would the Dark Ages have ever existed? Would we already have cured cancer, colonized Mars, or solved energy scarcity? Or would we have destroyed it anyway, once its contents became inconvenient? Because the truth is uncomfortable, the greatest threat to knowledge is not fire. It's us, the ones who silence dissent, the ones who rewrite history, the ones who scroll past truth in search of dopamine. And that's what makes the fall of Alexandria more than a cautionary tale. It's a mirror, a reminder that every generation stands on the edge of forgetting, that every civilization can decide preserve or erase, and that, sometimes, we don't even recognize the moment we set the match.